Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie, Executive Director of Home.
And I'm Jaya, Director of Casework and Legal.
5 years ago, the acquittal of Parti Liyani, a migrant domestic worker accused of theft, shocked the nation. In our first two videos, we discussed her trial and post-appeal developments. In this video, we revisit the recommendations Home made back then to ask, what has really changed?
Party's case raised hard questions about how our justice system treats low-wage migrant workers, from how police interviews are conducted to whether migrant workers involved in police investigations can work or access legal help.
Okay, so let's start with police interviews. Now, we recommended video recording all interviews across investigating agencies.
Yes, back then, only rape cases had mandatory video recording. Since then, it's expanded a bit to some sexual offences, child abuse, vulnerable persons. But migrant workers, as a group, are still excluded.
Now that's a problem because migrant workers are a vulnerable group. They often don't know their rights, may not be familiar with Singapore's official languages, and may not even realise when their words are misinterpreted.
Exactly. Without video recordings, in the event of a dispute, there's no independent record of how a statement was taken.
Another persistent issue, interpreters. Migrant workers continue to complain to us constantly about interpreters. Interpreters may scold them, dismiss their concerns, and they may not even translate everything they say.
Some may even give advice, like telling workers to withdraw a complaint or admit to offences. Some even belittle or berate workers for making complaints. It's not just unprofessional, it's unethical.
You know, it's astonishing that in 2025, it's still not mandatory to have an interpreter during an interview.
And while migrant workers may request an interpreter if one is not provided, how can they request something if they do not know that it is their right?
Exactly. We need enough interpreters and they should be trained in sensitivity and ethics. Otherwise, justice just gets lost in translation, like literally.
And then there's the right to work. Previously, almost all migrant workers who were accused of a crime were not allowed to work during investigations. Now, we've seen some improvement. More workers involved in police investigations are being granted the permission to work.
But it's still discretionary, right? The investigating officer still gets to decide. And how do they decide whether or not somebody is allowed to work?
That's something we don't know. And this discretionary approach can be months, even years without income. Workers may plead guilty just so they can go home or move on.
This goes against the basic principle of innocent until proven guilty. Everyone should have the right to work while waiting for the outcome of an investigation or a verdict from the court.
Especially since, as we saw in Parti Liyani's case, criminal accusations can be used by employers to deflect from their own wrongdoings. Another area where we've seen only partial progress is legal aid.
Right, since Party's case, Singapore has established a public defender's office,
which Home advocated for,
but migrant workers are not eligible. They're still relying on the criminal legal aid scheme.
And many employment-related offences, such as those under the Employment of Foreign Manpower Act, are not covered by legal aid.
Right, so that means if you're a migrant worker who's accused of, say, falsifying a work document, you still don't have access to free legal aid. You would have to find representation on your own or rely on NGOs to do it for you.
Access to justice shouldn't depend on your passport. We need a system that extends public defense to everyone, not just citizens.
So recently we had a call with Yani to find out how she's doing, and she gave us some updates about how life is like for her now back in Indonesia.
Apa kabar semuanya yang di situ?
Baik. Baik, alhamdulillah. Kamu gimana?
Aku juga baik, Kak.
Since Party went back to Indonesia, she's tried to set up a food stall, but it was during COVID, so business isn't doing that well.
Yani, are you at your restaurant now?
Ya, don't call restaurant, just warung.
Bisnisnya bagus.
Sekarang dibilang lancar ya nggak rame banget, cuma tiap hari masih ada orang beli gitu. Kalau ada acara yang lain-lain itu rame, kalau enggak biasa. Kalau saya bilang kalau pas ada orderan itu sedikit sama kan Kak Gusti tahu di Indonesia iya semua mahal ini dari beras, bahan baku seperti cabai semuanya mahal.
Jadi cukup lah ya untuk kehidupan setiap hari ya.
Ya kalau dibilang nggak cukup ya harus dicukup-cukupin tapi ya gitu cukup nggak cukup harus dicukupin karena kadang banyak orang beli kadang enggak, kadang harga naik kita nggak bisa naikin harga, semua beli barang mahal tapi kita jual nggak bisa naikin harga.
It feels like everyone has moved on, but Yani is still suffering from the consequences of being wrongfully accused of a crime she did not commit. She is unable to go back overseas to work. Her mother is ailing. How's your mom, Yani?
My mom now okay, but now it's like the body all very pain. Eat very little, like sometimes only 2 spoons, 3 spoons like that. Not like last time. So every day only sleeping.
There's still lingering trauma and after effects from what she had to go through for a very long time.
Mbak Yani waktu itu pas tinggal di home shelter kan lama ya Mbak, 4 tahun ada. Apa yang Mbak paling ingat pas Mbak tinggal di tempat kita?
Yang paling saya ingat itu waktu senangnya aja ya dulu. Yang ketemu orang-orang baik yang mau membantu kasus saya sampai selesai. Yang saya ingat, saya tidak pernah lupa. Yang sedihnya baru datang ke home, saya tidak tahu harus berpikir apa. Saya pikir masalah saya itu akan secepatnya selesai, tapi ternyata tidak semudah yang itu saya pikir.
Kesel gitu waktu dikasih vonis begitu?
Ya kesel banget. Saya tidak mencuri apapun, dia tuduh 26 bulan. Itu berapa lama? Kesel banget. Ya saya memutuskan untuk terus memperjuangkan kasus saya sampai berapa lama pun saya teruskan.
Padahal kalau misalnya waktu itu Mbak ngaku bersalah aja, mungkin Mbak udah bisa pulang lebih cepat ke Indonesia.
Iya, memang itu yang ada yang melakukan seperti itu, tapi saya tidak mau karena saya tidak pernah melakukan, saya jadi tidak mau untuk dipenjarakan selama 26 bulan karena saya tidak pernah melakukan. Setelah semuanya saya berpikir nggak seberat apa yang pertama kali saya masuk ke home. Terutama setelah kasus saya mulai diangkat, saya dapat bantuan dari lawyer Anil. Saya jadi semua bisa yang selalu saya pikir di otak saya sudah familiar, terbuka ya.
Looking back, Party's case appears to be a turning point, as well as a reminder of how much more remains to be done.
Yes, there have been some changes, but they're piecemeal.
We are asking for reforms that make justice accessible, video recorded interviews, professional interpreters, the right to work, and legal aid for all.
Support Home's advocacy, volunteer, donate, or simply share this message. Because justice shouldn't depend on your circumstances. It should be accessed by everyone, regardless of nationality or class.
Please like and share this video so it can reach a wider audience. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions on what content you'd like to see.